Welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice and making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 969-KTRS.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your live and local St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Aaron Lapidus, Vice President of JBL Financial Services, and I'm joined, I bet everyone's going to get a kick out of that, I'm joined this week by my favorite father, the only one, Jeff Lapidus.
That's right, babe. It's great to be here with everybody, and obviously with you. I'm a 40-year veteran in the financial services area, a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager. And our host of the day, of course, is a financial planner and wealth manager as well.
We help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate. Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one they can count on, so they can do all the things they'd like to do during retirement.
And third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to supplement their medical coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, with Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, Aaron and I watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Good morning, babe.
Good morning. How is sunny Florida?
Boy, it's beautiful. You know, your mom
Really?
picked out the absolute perfect room. It just stopped raining, and we've got this beautiful third-floor view directly onto the ocean. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And
well, thank you for sending the tropical rain our direction. It was like hailing here yesterday.
That's what I heard, and so I know that we're going to have a lot of fun this morning. Just as a reminder, all of our clients are folks that like you. There are listeners. They're 55 and older, they like to retire, or they're already retired. And as Aaron mentioned, we create a game plan for them so they can have a fun and hopefully financially secure and worry-free retirement. That's what the goal is.
That is the goal.
And we do, and there are lots of ways to keep in touch with us.
That's right.
During the week, right?
Of course. The most efficient way is to log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. You can click in the upper right-hand corner in the Contact Us section and send us a question, a request for a coaching session, or a comment. Or you're welcome to click in the lower left-hand side of the screen when the pop-up box appears that says Sign Up for our monthly newsletter. We call that the Coach's Corner. You can also scroll to the middle of the page and click Sign Up, and we will send that out to you every single month.
And Aaron and her staff do keep the last 6 to 8 months of those archived for your viewing, printing, or downloading convenience. And certainly you can also keep up with us on social media.
That's right. If you follow us on Twitter, our handle is JBL Financial, and you can also friend us on Facebook at JBL Financial. We like to include a lot of not only financial planning information, but also community information, things that are going on around town in the St. Louis metro area on both sides of the river.
And naturally, we've got an action-packed show for today. What really makes it fun is hearing from you. Our phone lines are always open. Give us a call, 314-931-5877, star 5877 from your cell phones, or 84126 from the text line. And what's nice, honey,
you did that without a cheat sheet, I feel.
There you go. And you've got the comm today, so you're going to pick up all the phone calls as well as all the text messages as you usually do, as they're always diverted from me.
Well, I'm in charge.
You certainly are, which is a lot of fun. I was going to say, while we are waiting for your calls today, we did want to center our show around two items. Number one is an email that we received from one of our clients. We're going to call them Bob and Barbara, two of my favorite names. Those are my parents' names. They had a variety of topics that they went through, and these are ones that I know you'll find of interest. We get questions from, and our clients are always searching for more information as well, so that they can make smarter choices about their money. Do you want to jump right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to do a little reading here because I wanted to do this verbatim. I think it's important. Barbara and I have recently attended one of the many complimentary dinner invitations we received from financial planners, and it resulted in several questions about our present retirement account investments and strategies, which is good. People should go out. I mean, these free dinners are wonderful. I used to be on the dinner circuit 18 years ago. Folks are still doing them today, and I think it's nice to obviously get different opinions because nobody has the corner truthfully and all good ideas, right, babe?
That is very true. And what's wrong with free dinner?
There you go, especially if you like the place. It was suggested that we roll over some of our tax-deferred accounts, which were traditional IRAs, into Roth IRAs between now and January of 2026, when the higher federal income tax rates will go into effect. And this is actually talking about the Trump tax rates being rolled back. And I think this is important. In 2020, our blended federal tax rate was approximately 28%, with a taxable income of approximately $175,000. According to what we were told, we could take nearly $150,000 of tax-deferred accounts and roll them into a Roth IRAs without moving into a higher tax bracket, which means that they would be converting Roth assets at an effective rate of 28%. Are you kidding me?
That's a little pricey.
I mean, are you kidding me?
So 128% of 150,000.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at somewhere in the area of about 40,000 in taxes to do that.
Okay, so that means instead of 150,000 going into the Roth, most likely only 110,000 is going into the Roth.
Unless, of course, they have the cash that they're going to be sending Uncle Sam, which I'm sure is going to put a big smile on their face.
Also, even if Bob and Barbara potentially have $40,000 in after-tax money, how much do they have? Because are we really considering draining all of their liquid assets? Because that's really what we consider after-tax money is liquid assets. You don't have to pay anyone to get at it.
Yeah, what's interesting here is somebody ran an analysis, of course, for them, trying to show them that maybe doing a Roth conversion made sense. Of course, they were out of their minds, but
then.
Well, no, it said the long-term impact of our tax-deferred holdings was illustrated. Possibly we could save $500,000 in taxes as compared to moving the money and paying the taxes now.
So where did they get that $500,000 of saved in taxes?
Honey, I have no idea. Okay.
Oh, well.
I looked. I mean, I have no
idea.
It just doesn't make any sense. Okay. Here's for a couple reasons. Number one, as you said, and you pointed out very well, when you're doing a Roth conversion, unless you pay the taxes out of your own cash, like in this case, $40,000 in taxes, that means you're really only converting $110,000. So let's compare to that to where we would be at the end. Number two, if you are paying the $40,000 in taxes, well, what about that money and the growth of that money over a long period of time? Number three, and this I think is the key issue here. Okay, two of them. There's an assumption here that income taxes are going to go up in 2026.
And never go back down again.
Well, I say no, nanette. Okay?
Right.
Is the current president going to get reelected? Who knows? Is the Congress going to permit these tax increases to occur? Who knows? And then finally, I think maybe the most important fact here is that our current president said that he wants to raise tax on folks over $400,000. For everybody that isn't under $400,000, if these tax increases sunset, you're going to see an increase of 2% of your taxes.
Oh, you mean not 28%?
That's right. So let's get real. It makes no sense in any parallel universe to convert money at 28%. If our client was to wait until they, and this is interesting later because down further in the paragraph he talks about the fact that it was predicted during retirement that we should need an income of approximately $85,000 per year. Social Security will provide $50,000 of that, so that our RMDs for our retirement accounts should provide the balance that we will need to deal with our needs. If we look at the tax rates as they sit today, we know that. I mean, honey, you can read them because we have them for the folks. You'll find that the top of the 12% tax rate is $80,000.
So that means
our client's income is going to drop, right? I mean, we know that their income is going to drop, and actually, since we're funding for their income needs, why would they convert at a 28% rate today when they can wait later and convert at 12?
Right, because we left out the fact that Bob is still working, so that's why they have $175,000 of income currently, whereas down the line when Bob retires, their taxable income will decrease in a couple of ways. One, they're going to live off of the net of Bob's current pay, so they don't have to worry about that gross number that he's currently paying taxes on. But secondly, even in the highest income bracket, only 85% of Bob and Barbara's Social Security is going to be taxed, so 15% is going to be non-taxable to them. So that already takes more income that they will be receiving off the table in terms of taxation.
Yes, and I would say that I'll use the word fallacy, even though that I think the word truthfully should be fantasy. Okay.
Okay.
The fantasy that is out there, whether it's on TV, whether it's on the radio, whether it's in writing, is that people are in a higher effective tax rate at their retirement than they are when they're working. It is insane. No one is ever in a higher tax rate when they retire. They're just not.
Even individuals who have access to pensions, which are more rare now, but we still have quite a few people, especially in the area with many large companies or former government employees that have access to pensions. Even in those cases, when we take pension plus Social Security plus any extra that would be coming from retirement accounts, even when we get to 72, when required minimum distributions are in order, we're still seeing that the majority of individuals are not in a lower tax bracket than they were when they were working.
Yeah, and so here's the oh my God, right?
Right.
You have this huge IRA. Let's just say that our client Bob had an IRA that was the size of it was $1 million.
Okay.
Which isn't unusual.
Okay.
His required minimum distribution at 72 would be less than $40,000 or less than 4%. The income tax on that for him would be approximately $4,000.
So $4,000 a year for how many years does it take to get to that 500 to get to 28,000? Number one, and then where did the 500,000 come from again? I wonder.
Yeah. So I think what's important is that it's good to have good dinners. It's good to gather information. But I think what you really need to do is to take a step back, have a meaningful discussion with your advisor about this. So, that was kind of
there are also, and I also think the other thing that we should point out is there are other tax mitigation strategies available to individuals who take required minimum distributions, like charitable contributions, which could continue to reduce that $4,000 number and not really change what Bob and Barbara are normally doing. If they're already charitable, we could just change the bucket in which they're sending those charitable contributions from.
Yeah, and the other thing, honey, and this is something that you mentioned and I had forgotten to do, so I do appreciate that, is that Bob is still actively at work.
Right.
And we had a question last week from somebody about Roth. I love Roth. I think Roth IRAs are fabulous if you're in a position where you can make contributions.
Or Roth 401ks, which are even better.
That's right. Bob could, if he wanted to, assuming that he had done his analysis, and we find out that based on his income needs, that they're currently satisfied from traditional IRA distributions and as well as Social Security, why not begin to pay a little bit of extra taxes today because you're not getting the upfront deduction, is go into Roth 401k. Create a pool of money. Do that for a couple of years. Nothing wrong with that. And then obviously at the time of his retirement, what he could then do is take those assets and move them into a Roth IRA. If he has a Roth, he can actually add it to an existing Roth IRA.
Right.
Not a bad idea, but paying taxes on huge amounts of money makes no sense, especially when you're going to be in a lower effective tax rate.
Right. So, I think there's 2 points here, right? Which is the first point is why, if you've decided that you absolutely want to do this in some way, why are we doing it today when at retirement we could be saving, nearly half in taxes just by waiting a couple of years? And then secondly, why at all if we're looking at this particular situation when we know that the taxation is going to be, less than $5,000 a year once we get to required minimum distributions?
Yeah, and I think the point being made here is if you were to look up what the 2020 tax brackets, what you would see is in this particular case for a married couple filing jointly, the top of the 12% bracket is $80,250. The top of the 22% bracket is $171,000. So forget about this 28% tax bracket stuff.
Ouch.
I mean, you certainly could, again, convert a little bit and, again, bring down your total effective tax rate. I mean, when Bob's talking about 28%, we're talking about every dollar over his total income being at 28%. We're talking about at retirement, 90+% of our clients, they're at 10. There's a lot of room between 10 and 28. Don't rule number one, right, babe, which is
stacking is not cleaning. No.
Never pay tax. Right. Thank you, babe. You're right. Stacking is not clean.
Or never pay taxes on money you're not spending.
That's right. Never do that. Never pay tax up front. Never make tax decisions on things that don't necessarily aren't reality.
Well, we also know, just like you mentioned, this is all up in the air what happens in 2026. But regardless of what happens in 2026, when we look down the road further, we know tax rates always go up, but they always go down again. So pre-planning for something along those lines might not be the most effective.
And you really have to, again, take a look at what the tax changes are. For everybody that's out there listening, except for maybe a couple, the effective tax rates are only rising by 2%. That certainly is no incentive for anyone
to spend 28%.
Exactly. Just let the craziness continue. So hopefully, hopefully our client was listening today, and I know that they were because they usually do, which is a good thing. So let's get to topic number 2, which I think is great in this issue. The other important change that was suggested was that we move a fair amount of money into funds that are less reactive to stock fluctuations. Sounds like a reasonable idea. We did a risk tolerance test.
Ooh. And
it was demonstrated that our preferred risk level is 14 instead of where we are today at 47. I'm sorry, I can't help it. And it also demonstrated that as presently distributed, our investments could suffer 18% loss against the 24% maximum gain in a year, depending on stock performance.
Really?
Just so folks know, one of the newbie things that are being done by broker-dealers, which I think make a lot of sense, is that stock portfolios, there are programs that are out there. One's called Riskalyze. I don't think we're in trouble by saying it because that's what everybody's using. Is our portfolios are constantly tested by the people that we work with to make sure that they're inside of the risk tolerance that they should be. 47 happens to be what we would call a moderate or conservatively moderate portfolio, which should be somewhere in the range of 60% to 70% stocks, 30 to 40% of bonds. 14 is I'm 100 years old and I don't really want to have any exposure to the market where I have maybe a 10 to 20% stock exposure. No way, Jose.
14%, so that means that 86% is going to be in fixed income?
Yeah, exactly. So why does this, first of all, why does this not make sense? And on the other side, what is this really a reaction to? You know, as folks get closer to retirement or they're actually beginning to retire, they're all concerned. Every single one of them are concerned about the loss of capital during retirement because they don't have an opportunity, possibly with a stock downturn, because they won't have an opportunity to make new contributions and build it back up. One thing that we know about the markets, and this is historical, we have dips and we have peaks. It goes down, it goes up. At the same time, what happens is if you're in a situation like our clients Bob and Barbara and probably 90% of our listeners, that you do require and you are needing to begin to withdraw money from your retirement accounts, hopefully you're drawing the interest, that's at least what you're thinking, okay, and maintaining that principal over a long period of time, you need to be invested in such a way so that you can do that. Having a conservative or ultra-conservative portfolio, it ain't going to happen. Right, babe? It just can't.
Unfortunately, it is not going to happen. The other thing that was mentioned is this I like the yield versus the potential risk of loss. And these calculators take a lot of assumptions into account, one in which is that you do nothing during a significant market downturn. And I think we've talked about this on multiple occasions. Depending upon what is going on, why we're experiencing a pullback in the market, as advisors, we make that decision for the clients is if we are going to make changes to our portfolio or if we're going to ride it out and wait to see a rebound. You know, last year in March, we didn't wait it out. So the risk analysis assumes that you ride every wave to the bottom and wait for the wave to come back to the top. That isn't necessarily the case, especially if you're working with someone, paying them to watch your assets.
And they're also somebody that's willing to make those decisions, which obviously we felt was important.
Right.
And we did those, and you know, most of our clients have been extremely pleased with the
I don't think we're allowed to comment on performance, but it wasn't what was mentioned in that paragraph, we can say.
Yeah. What was also mentioned was about yield.
Right.
You know, one philosophy in terms of investing for retirement, again, there's nothing wrong with it, is the concept of developing yield, which is basically income, whether it's interest or dividends, which could then create an income stream for someone. That's okay, but there are several factors that you have to consider. Number one is that if we look at what interest rates are like today, and you know what they're like in the banks.
If you can even see them, they are very small.
They are very small. They are microscopic. I mean, we're looking at bond yields that are less than 2% generally, okay, unless we're getting into riskier investments. We're also looking at dividend rates that on average, the S&P 500 run about 2.5%.
And that's to say, if companies continue to pay dividends, we experienced a ceasing of dividend payments last year. So every type of investment strategy has its own inherent risks.
The other thing is that, again, when you're considering withdrawal rates, if you're in a situation where you need to withdraw 3 or 4 or 5% of income from your portfolio, if you're not developing that much income, then what happens is you're seeing principal
erosion
being consumed. And when principal is consumed, dividend rates go down, et cetera. For us, we've really taken a different approach. Over the last really 7-8 years, growth has outpaced value, i.e. dividend stocks. So what we tend to do is we take a different approach. We talk about it virtually every week. We just did it the other day. We ask clients what their cash needs are. We restrict that much cash in their portfolios, whether it's for income purposes or for what we'll call non-continuing spending
for the next 6 months.
Yeah, we have a wedding. It's over the next 6 months. We hold that cash aside and then we rebalance the portfolio. The concept is we're skimming growth and we're rebalancing back to the folks' risk tolerance.
And the other piece that this does is, in the event that we're seeing a market downturn, we don't have to make sales in order to meet our clients' cash flow needs immediately. So we're not selling into negative markets. That way, the client accounts have your account has the opportunity to resuscitate essentially and rebuild again while you're still able to maintain your same level of income. You don't have to worry about, do I need to cancel that trip we planned because I don't want to take money out of the market right now.
Yeah, and also rebalancing is extremely important. What it does is it permits you to realize gains, and especially in IRA accounts, when you're skimming profits gains, there's no taxation until that money is actually taken out of the account. We just did ours on Thursday.
Right.
Pretty good timing. I mean, it wasn't on purpose timing, but
I was mentioning that
fabulous timing.
It was auspicious. Yes.
Yeah, it just happened to be perfect timing, right? We skimmed gains, market went down, we skimmed the gains, we reallocated the portfolios, then whoop.
Right, and that's, I would love to give us more credit than we deserve. However, that is also a function of something that we talk about frequently, that you need rules and it's important to follow them. One of our rules is that we rebalance the client accounts every 6 months, using that same process that we discussed, making sure that there's enough cash for each individual based on their needs for the next 6 months, rebalancing everyone's accounts to fit their risk tolerance and what our expectation of the market may be in the upcoming 6 months. And because we did that mechanically, it just so happened that it worked to our benefit, because when you have rules and stick to them, you can't control what you can't control, but you can control what you can. So that's important.
Yeah, I mean, good luck comes from having rules. I mean, that's really what happens. So we're obviously going to stick by our guns on this.
Sure.
I think what's important here is that, with Bob and Barbara, is number one is that they're looking for new ideas, because no one has, truthfully, the corner on all good ideas.
Sure.
They're testing their plans. They're also able to, if nothing else, they got a nice dinner, and they also maybe got some input from someone that has a different opinion, because not all financial advisors
take the same approach to everything.
Exactly. They certainly don't.
Oh, we did receive one text comment, I will say, not question.
Fabulous.
What you guys just explained is exactly right. Well, we love to hear that. There are a lot of talk out there about Roth conversions, and they are not for everyone. And the reasons you brought up are dead on. You explained it really well. Makes for a good way to swing new clients to maybe. Not everyone takes the time to consider all of the real options available in the decision.
Yes, and we've talked about this many times. The true, at the end of the day, reason, in my mind, that you want to do or consider a Roth conversion is because you want to pay taxes on those IRAs, so that when your children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren or boyfriends or girlfriends, whoever it would be, inherit these from you, that they're inheriting them tax-free. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, that's the main reason. Now, if that's your reason, we would tell you that Roth conversions are one way to do it. There are also other ways that
are possible.
You can do it.
That's right.
Exactly. There are much other alternatives, and maybe next week we'll have a discussion about what we consider as the best Roth conversion,
the most efficient Roth conversion ever.
Yeah. And so, what's efficient? I mean, efficient in our mind is you pay the least amount of taxes, the least amount of cash flow, and that you're able to get the result that you want.
Right.
So that's what we'll certainly do. The last part of this email, this is a big email. I mean, this was just a great one. This was just a big, big email. Okay. Was the client had a question about long-term care. Should they include long-term care as a part of their planning? They were recommended a life insurance policy. Of course. It's a product thing, right?
Absolutely.
As a way of solving their needs. We're a little different. We look at long-term care insurance and long-term care planning as really a function, or very similar to disability insurance planning, right?
Right.
We've got two metrics to deal with. Number one is, what is the cost of living for a non-institutionalized, or we'll call it non-chronically ill spouse? Usually $2,000 to $3,000 a month, assuming they don't have a mortgage. And then what is the cost of care for that institutionalized or chronically ill spouse, which could run between $7,000 and $10,000 a month?
Right.
What we then do is we're looking at what is our client's cash flows. Like in this particular case, our client says he has Social Securities. They have cash flow that they're receiving that they're expecting to receive from their investments, if nothing else, at least as RMDs. And then the question then is, what is the gap? What do we have to fill, right? It isn't the whole cost of care, it's the difference. So as an example, in this case with our client, let's use $12,000 a month.
Okay.
$10,000 a month for care, because they're in a nursing home. It's not like they're receiving care at home. And let's say $2,000 for the non-institutionalized spouse, because.
And the reason that number is so low is we're projecting they won't have a mortgage at this point, but also because when one spouse becomes chronically ill, all of the lifestyle expenses that the couple was originally spending really fall away. You're not going on vacation anymore, unfortunately. Most likely, going out to eat is much less frequent. Any other kind of social activities kind of fall away for the most part. So we're really kind of talking about just making sure that the non-institutionalized spouse has enough money to upkeep the house and, pay for groceries, things like that.
Cool. So let's go again back to their numbers. So we're looking at $12,000 a month. We know that their Social Security benefits are going to run about $5,000. Those are going to continue if they become ill. Mm-hmm. They were saying is that, and we know this, is that they have about $1.2 million in retirement assets, which prudently, without going to the principal, we think we can cash flow at about $48,000 a year or $4,000 per month. So 4 plus 5 is 9. If they were interested in purchasing long-term care insurance, or this something was available to them, or they wanted it, we're looking at a benefit of about $3,000 a month, which in their case would run about $250 a month of premium. At the same time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we may be in a position where their assets may have grown to the point where it can cover that other $3,000 a month.
Sure.
Is this important? Is it a necessity? The answer is up to them. How important do they feel it is for them? Purchasing long-term care insurance, if we can for them, even on a short-term basis, if it makes you feel good, you do it.
And especially when we're talking about the products that are available, just like anything else, there's a whole suite of options available to you. But what we're trying to do here, just like we talked about briefly before, what's the most efficient way to get to where we want to go? Well, is there a need for life insurance for Bob and Barbara in addition to long-term care? If there's not a need for life insurance, why are we purchasing a life insurance product? Maybe we should be just considering a long-term care product. Those are available that provide care for individuals at home, in assisted living, and also in skilled nursing. So they call those comprehensive policies. There are other policies available that use your assets first. That creates a lower hurdle in terms of underwriting for you. So that might be an option for individuals as well. But we want to make sure that we're matching the product to what the goal is, because at the end of the day, these products are not the objective. They're just the tools to get us to our objective.
You make a really good point here, babe, and I know you've analyzed in the past, and maybe it's been a couple of years we've talked about this, which is, does it make sense to bundle long-term care with life insurance or unbundle it? I know the conclusion we came before in the past was it's better to be unbundled because the actual cost of long-term care insurance is less expensive as standalone. Well, you're also mentioning in this particular case, they're not using assets inside of their IRA to purchase this. They can't.
You cannot.
And so what they're talking about is, we know this particular client has some large cash reserves, and that's why life insurance, a single sum life insurance policy, was recommended to them. You mentioned something that was a little different, which is an annuity contract. The basic concept behind it, and again, listen, annuities are based on the insurance, the paying ability of the insurance company, just like life insurance is.
Right.
The basic concept here is, and tell me if I'm wrong, what you're doing is the interest that you earn on the annuity, it's a fixed annuity. Mm-hmm. It's basically being kept or retained by the insurance company to pay for the long-term care premium.
Exactly. So what happens is, when you purchase the annuity initially, they'll give you a table that reflects your age and what the interest rate that they are willing to pay is. And then you'll also see, in addition to that, based on your age, what the interest amount they will be taking in order for them to pay for the long-term care insurance that you've purchased with this annuity. they also have a clause in most of the contracts, especially the ones that we work with, that say the cost of the rider, so the cost of the long-term care, can never exceed the interest that they are going to credit to your account. So as your age rises, the amount that they keep is going to rise, but it can never exceed what they're willing to credit you initially. So you're never going to see capital erosion inside of the annuity. However, the opportunity cost here is you may be holding the cash in a non-interest bearing account by the time you get into your 80s, 90s.
Yes. So again, each of these is a game plan, right? All intertwined together. We've got a game plan for cash flow. We have a game plan for income taxes. We have a game plan for long-term care expenses. And then certainly we always have to have a game plan for passing assets on to those that we love.
Right.
Again, the client also said in this email that we prepare a trust. I love that. What was the first word? A trust, will, or estate plan.
Oh, okay.
So, no, I mean, trust was the first word.
Right.
Having a living trust is going to cost you about $3,000. Period. That's what attorneys cost. Even with the folks that we work with, they're not.
Unless you have access to like a prepaid legal, but that's usually rare now.
Yes, that's correct. And so, what I would suggest is this: and we're not lawyers, but we work with a lot of folks and helping them, and we facilitate them getting to lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a trust if you don't need the assets managed after your death, period. Mm-hmm. If you trust the beneficiary, your beneficiaries, your children, your grandchildren, assuming that they're not minors, then you don't need a trust to hold those assets because you trust. If you don't trust, then you need a trust.
Right.
If you have a disabled person, a special needs child, then you may need a trust. But other than that, you don't need a trust.
Well, interesting. I had a conversation with some prospective clients just yesterday on this topic, and they, ironically, had access to some prepaid legal. So they had already started the process, and I just said, hey, well, what is the plan for the distribution of your assets after you pass away? What did you talk to the attorney about when you were having this document prepared? And this couple has four girls, and they said, oh, well, we're just going to split all the assets equally. Well, what you can do is, if you've already decided that you're splitting all of your assets equally and you're comfortable with your children receiving whatever amount that might be, then just like my dad said, you don't really need a trust in order to achieve that, because you've spent potentially $3,000 or more on something that can be done at no cost to you. By designating beneficiaries on all of your accounts in the manner that you would like to pass those assets on, whether it be in equal parts or maybe it's not in equal parts. As long as you're comfortable with those beneficiaries receiving the assets, you can do this without creating a trust document.
Yes. Again, if you trust, you do not need a trust.
Oh, we have another text question this morning.
Woo-hoo. Good. Just take a listen to me talk. I love that.
Good morning. Based on the math, myself and most people I speak to can retire before 65. But we are afraid of health care costs before Medicare. Can you speak about the cost to your current clients who retire before Medicare? I absolutely can do that. Well, first of all, if you are on a group health insurance plan, you have a spouse that's potentially on a group health insurance plan, as long as they've been on that policy for 1 day, they'll have access to COBRA for at least 18 months. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the price of your COBRA because all that is your health insurance policy that you currently have with your employer, but without any employer subsidy. So what that means is, instead of the employer paying a portion of the premium and you contributing a portion through a payroll deduction, you're now responsible for 100% of the premium. Many clients in retirement choose this direction because they feel comfortable with their health insurance policy and they're willing to pay that premium. It can run, depending upon your health insurance plan, anywhere from $600 to $2,000. So that's something that we have to factor into our cash flow game plan, in that we know that many individuals that are retiring before 65 are going to have higher cash flow needs for two reasons. One, most likely you're not taking your Social Security benefit. And number two, you have elevated health insurance costs. However, we know both of those things will be reduced over a short period of time. You get to 65, that health insurance cost falls away. You get to the point in which you are taking Social Security. That means you'll be taking less from your retirement accounts. So, those two things are important to factor together. The other alternative that we've seen many clients take advantage of, especially once they retire, is using the Affordable Care Act. Now, the policy designs might not be as ideal as what you were used to when you had your group health insurance policy. However, because the Affordable Care Act uses income, adjusted gross income, as the marker for a subsidy versus net worth, many clients are able to take advantage of a subsidy because, like we've talked about, in retirement, your income is going to drop because you're not living off of the gross now. You won't need to fund to the gross when you retire. You're going to fund to your net. So that automatically can cut your income by as much as 40%. So many clients are able... Go ahead.
That's good, honey. And you're right. And what we've seen is many of our clients have, in many cases, put off pulling money from their retirement accounts. And maybe that's where they've used their Roth IRA distributions, or maybe they've used non-retirement assets to fund them.
Which is also an important factor in considering. If we go all the way back to Bob and Barbara, when we're talking about them taking $40,000 from their after-tax money in order to fund a Roth conversion, what did you do to your ability to pay for insurance or to structure your income to reduce your expenses of health insurance by liquidating what was already liquid cash to you?
And also, wasn't mentioned here is if you think about it, we have an $80,000 net, but then we put $150 on it. Guess what? That just made your Medicare Part B premiums more expensive.
That's also true. So if you're
for no reason,
right? If
really,
if you're considering retirement within the next 2 years, you really want to consider these Roth conversions, because that is not a reason that they will. So the federal government does understand that when you retire, most likely your income is going to change, and they will allow you to petition to reduce your Medicare Part B premium based on your expected income versus your past income, because Medicare Part B is based on a 2-year look back. Every year they look back 2 years to see what your income was, and that's how they base your Medicare premium. Electing Roth conversions is not a reason that the federal government will reduce your Medicare premium. What that will do is give you a higher Medicare premium for at least 1 year if you are successively, like using the case of Bob and Barbara, converting significant amount of assets over multiple years. Well, that's just going to push out how long your Medicare Part B premium is going to be elevated. And like I said, you'll have to wait it out in order to see the reduction versus being able to, the day you retire, submit the paperwork to say, I've retired, please reduce my Medicare premium to, my $85,000 income versus $175,000+ income.
Taxes.
All different kinds of taxes.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes we get say, Jeff, other people talk about taxes. Our life is about taxes. Every single transaction that we've talked about this morning, every one of them has tax ramifications. And putting this puzzle together, making sure that it works for you in a synergistic way, means that tax planning is essential. It's essential in every transaction. It's essential for planning today and also planning for the future. Tax efficiency, tax effectiveness. They're two different things, and it's certainly something you have to consider.
We have one quick question, if we can jump back to the trust conversation.
Yes.
What about trusts for lawsuit protection?
Well, trust can help protect your non-retirement assets from lawsuit protection. We know that IRA assets already have protection from lawsuits. So if that's something that's important to you, I think it's something you should consider. But paying $3,000 for a trust I don't know. I mean, again, I think we're now entering the realm of an attorney. I think you would best be advised to do that.
Right. You need to consider your own individual situation. But when we look across our clients, we know that for the majority of our clients, 90+% of their assets are held in retirement accounts. So for most people, we're not talking about very large after-tax money that they've accumulated because everyone followed conventional wisdom, which was put as much money as possible into your retirement accounts. You get the upfront deduction, you get your employer contribution, and you're saving money that's locked away for retirement. Most people didn't have the opportunity to save much more on top of that. So just like we're mentioning, for some people, trusts are important. That's another category of individuals where a trust might be a smart decision. But an estate plan does not require a trust, I think, is our overarching theme. So before you start investing in attorney fees, you might want to consider it on the front end as opposed to having to pay for the conversation to find out you don't necessarily want or need the trust.
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. If you don't trust, you need a trust. Now, that isn't to say that you don't need an updated will, because we know that wills do create living benefit provisions, living benefits i.e. that we're talking about medical directives, durable power of attorney. These are two items that you need to have already in place so that should you be in a position where you're incapacitated, your health care objectives can be continued, and at the same time your financial situation can also be managed if you're physically unable to, and that's what a living will do. The next step, obviously, would be a trust, but everybody should have a living will, period. They just should.
We have a really interesting text question now.
Wonderful. Sounds good. And then after that, I think we're probably going to have to go to our smart choice about our healthcare section if we do have time.
Is it recommended to diversify the financial institutions you invest in? For example, Wells Fargo. Well, I guess I can say the texter wrote this, not myself. Wells Fargo, Stifel, et cetera, worried about hacks and institutional viability.
No.
Right, because each of these institutions, Wells Fargo, Stifel, other large broker-dealers that you work with, as long as you can that you can verify, and you have to have this posted, I know that we do, that they have SIPC insurance protection in your investment accounts. So what this does is it protects against fraud and theft, which would be hacks and institutional viability.
Yes, and unlike the unlike your bank accounts, which only have up to, I guess,
$250,000. Mm-hmm.
etc. You have $3 million of SIPC insurance in your investment account
per investment account.
Right. So you don't really need multiple financial institutions to diversify your risk.
Right.
And the truth is that you probably don't want multiple investment advisors because there's more than one cook in the kitchen spoils the soup.
Right. And also, if you are working with an investment advisor and you see the portfolio that they have constructed for you, that is where you find your diversification. You know, what investments have they selected? What is the mix of those investments? Because, for example, you could work with multiple advisors and they could all hold the exact same mutual fund or other security in the account for you. You haven't created any diversification there. What you've really created is duplication, because it's basically like owning the same thing, but you have it in 3 different rooms.
Yeah, and you can create, as you're saying, honey, over concentrations, which aren't really good for your portfolio. They all may be diversified, but the truth is, brought together, they're over concentrated.
Right.
I know we do have a couple of minutes left. Do we want to go to our smart choice about our healthcare? Do we have enough time to do that?
I think we can absolutely do that. I met with Bob and Sally. It seems like Bob is quite a popular gentleman with the ladies this week. They came in for a financial and Medicare coaching session because Bob is considering retiring in the next few years, but they had a more pressing question, which was Sally's 67 years old and she's on Bob's health insurance. However, she's also signed up for Medicare Part A and B when she turned 65 a couple of years ago. So really what's happening here is let's just talk about how the plan is, how Sally's health insurance is functioning now. Because Bob works for an employer that has more than 20 employees, Bob's coverage is primary. So anytime Sally uses her health insurance, it goes through Bob's coverage first. Then it gets passed to Medicare. Medicare is only going to pay up to 80% of the actuarial value of the claim, which means it's not like the olden days when if you were cross-covered on a spouse's policy, many times you ended up paying absolutely nothing because your policy paid, your spouse's policy paid, and then you had a negligible bill or none at all. Medicare is not going to pay the balance. It's only going to pay the balance up to 80%. So what we wanted to do was kind of take a look at the numbers to see if this made sense, because what Sally's really doing is using Medicare to supplement her current health insurance. Bob works for a mid-size employer, which means that, like many, Sally has access to the health insurance, but she's not getting any help from Bob's employer in terms of the premium. So they're paying $670 a month for the health insurance. Now, this is tax advantage in that it comes out of Bob's check before taxes, but that's the only benefit that they're receiving. So this really kind of seems like a no-brainer, right? We know that supplements run generally less than $200 a month for individuals that are, 65 to 69 years old. So in Sally's case, it'd be about $175 a month plus $25 for some prescription drug coverage. They're already paying the Medicare premium, so we don't have to factor that in. And the only extra charge that Sally would have is a $190 deductible for Medicare Part B if she selected the Plan G supplement. But then, of course, Sally mentioned, I've already hit my maximum out of pocket this year. Our plan renews in December, and I have a surgery coming up, so does it make any sense to switch now? Now, on the face of it, you might say, no, it doesn't make sense to switch because essentially Sally's already paid all the money she has to in order to get into the insurance company's pocket at 100%. But let's look at the math. $670 a month for the next 5 months is $3,300. $200 a month for the next 5 is only $1,000. Let's add the $190 in for the deductible, and we're still at $1,100 essentially, or $1,200. So it still really does make sense for Sally to switch as soon as possible, because even though she'll have a little out-of-pocket expense to pay, the premium is so much different that we would still be saving nearly $2,000 for her in the year. Now, the other thing that we need to consider is prescription drug coverage. Under Sally's current policy, those prescriptions go towards her maximum out of pocket, so now she's not paying anything for them since she's already hit that maximum number. When we took a look at her prescriptions under Medicare, the nice thing was that they were all generics that would be covered at no extra charge to her. So although she didn't hit a maximum on Medicare, because with prescriptions there never is one, her current prescriptions were not going to cost her anything more. So in our minds, it still made sense to make this change.
Wow, that's fabulous. Having the ability to look at it both ways, having an expert like that, like you, babe, in the office to do that is just it's fabulous. And I'm sure Bob and Sal will make the best decision that they can.
That's right. And it's nice to know that, they have there's nothing wrong with what they've done, but if we can make it better, having an extra $2,000 in their pocket would be excellent. And they won't be giving anything up on the health insurance side of things, because with that supplement, like we've talked about in the past, she has no network. Medicare is her network. That means she can see any physician that accepts Medicare. There are no referrals, so if she was using a PPO-style plan, she won't feel any different with the policy. And then we're going to cut her out. We didn't even take a look at the plan design because the premium was so high in this particular case. But we know that we're most likely to be able to cut her out-of-pocket expenses down to $190 a year, which is excellent.
And what's really cool is that if that works for her, when she comes around to January, woohoo, open enrollment, she could switch to a Medicare Advantage plan if that made sense to her, and then go to zero premium.
That's right. There are quite a few options. And it looks like we are just about out of time, so we're going to have to say, Dad, we'll see you back in the studio next week.
We hope we see everybody here for a coaching session, 314-863-0008, or send us an email, Jeff or Aaron at jblfinancial.com.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the Retirement Coach. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS.
Control.